good afternoon and welcome from the UK and particularly from Fintricity, Tricordant and Kairos Consulting. My name is Nick Richmond from Tricordant, and we have Alpesh from Fintricity and Val from Kairos Consulting Solutions. If you want to learn more about us, do check us out online. But why are we together and why are we setting up this webinar? Well, there's been lots of talk and articles and blogs about digital and new technologies. But when Fintricity, Tricordant and Kairos first met, we really recognized that each of us have a great complementary digital transformation and design capabilities. But when we read and listened to the discussions online and in the various journals, a lot of digital transformation is really missing an important element, and that's the people. So it's the people who bring digital transformations to life and make it work to realize the expected benefits and deliver the value to customers through these new digital opportunities. So that's why we decided to bring our combined insights together, whether from Fintricity's technology perspectives or Tricordant's organization design perspectives or Kairos's digital leadership perspectives. So during this webinar, we are going to cover two main sessions and then have an opportunity for some Q&A at the end. Val and I will lead the first session called Digital Behaviors to explore the behaviors needed to successfully execute a digital transformation and ensure the organizational sustainability using a case study. And then talk about some of the lessons we've learned through our experiences and maybe some practical but powerful examples. This will be followed by Alpesh, who's going to talk us through how to leverage big data, disruptive technologies such as blockchain and new business models to transform your business using the financial services, Uber, Airbnb as use case studies. And then, as I was saying, after both the sessions, there's going to be an opportunity to explore some of the questions that have emerged. And the way to ask the question is to type it into the chat box as it comes to mind during the sessions, and then we'll get a chance, we'll have a look at the most common or the most interesting questions at the end and see which ones that we can answer. So I hope you're all ready. I hope you've got your coffee or tea in hand, and we're going to get into it now. So digital is a completely new way of thinking and a new way of doing, which means that we cannot stay within our traditional lines and need to go beyond these, just as Thomas Vasquez says about coloring outside the lines. But what are digital behaviors? And what do we mean by digital behaviors? When we had a look online and taken some research, there's no official definition anywhere at present. So we have a simple set of points that really describe some of the observable actions and behaviors that you would want to see emerging through the transformation process. And these behaviors need to manifest at all the system levels, not just at the operational levels. So some of these include that people are really actively seeking to understand their customers and their needs and how these are going to change the way the organization creates value. That senior managers and particularly the chief exec are stepping up to the plate to recognize the importance of being committed to and leading the digital agenda and not letting or delegating a middle manager or maybe a program manager to be leading that piece of work. There's going to be increasing levels of collaboration and team working across the organization to understand the digital agenda rather than digital just being part of a single function or part of a process. That people are continuously sensing and responding to the external dynamics impacting on your organizations. So knowing what's out there and whether the organization needs to respond to those dynamics or not. There's a real sense of experimentation and fast failure to test, learn, and adapt the organization to better fulfill the customer's needs. And one of the last points is really about digital technology and digital capabilities being embedded throughout the whole operating model. So recognizing this is a holistic transformation of the business and not just a simple training program or an IT program. So Val's going to highlight some of these behaviors through a case study, and then I'll talk about some of the lessons we've learned from the case study and further afield.
Okay, thank you, Nick. My name is Val Sedunik, and I will share with you a life example, a life case study I was involved in in a digital transformation with a global insurance company. So my background is change and transformation, and this was the first life case study we worked closely together with IT. And as you can see, I provide you some of the context. Financial services, like any other companies or any other industry, are driven by change and driven by the changing of the environment and the speed of technology and informed customer. And this company, this leading insurer, decided to introduce a new claim handling platform and digital software to enhance or improve the entire claim lifecycle. So it was a let so they wanted to achieve a single IT system to improve the speed of the claims process and to work better with the customer. So this was the starting point, and like many from our experience, many digital transformation projects start IT-led, because IT is mostly the forefront of technology, have an understanding and have a starting point. But very soon the business recognized, with a new CEO coming on board, that this is a great opportunity for the company to transform and to build the digital and dynamic capabilities the business needs in order to go forward. So, and that was when we then started, or I came on board with a team to work closely with IT, but also consider what will be the impact of creating a completely new claims department led by the opportunities that the new software and platform provides. So and at the core of this initiative is improve customer service, but also better efficiency and effectiveness of operations and digital behavior and digital thinking of the workforce. So let me now share, I'm going to the next slide. Let me know, sorry about that. Let me now share with you how we approached it. So when we started, and again, this is something that's, I'm observing this on other projects, is instead of a linear implementing a new software, we proposed to the business we're going to have a holistic approach and developed a framework. So we have basically three core drivers in this whole transformation. One is three key work streams. One was the IT systems change work stream. So working closely with IT to tweak the processes and the software to deliver to the claims department. Then we had an operational organizational work stream to design new ways of working, design processes, new ways of working. And then we had another main work stream with culture and behavior and change. So I'm going to share with you what we did in this work stream to initiate the transformation. And as you're probably all aware on this call, you cannot manage change by telling people what to do. So, and our decision was to create a framework that enables the system to change and enable people to change and to experience change themselves and the benefit of the changes. So that's how we introduced agile and collaborative ways of working. So throughout the whole project, we made sure we worked with the key stakeholders in collaboration, so they always were informed about decision making, about the direction the project has taken. And then for the work stream organizational operational changes, we co-created innovative business processes and workflows with key stakeholders. So what I'm meaning by that is we we worked with the claims handler and basically had an experiential journey. How would this look like if you're in front of your screen that's like a cockpit, and it's different than you worked before, with different screens, with different systems, and how would this change your ways of working, and what do you need in terms for accountability and responsibility, and what does it mean in connection and your communication with the customer. So we visualized the journey in the operational journey, but also the customer journey, and that's how we approached the organizational operational changes, and in collaboration with the key stakeholders, then we mapped out the different processes and new ways of working. At the same time, and this were initiatives in parallel, at the same time we designed leadership interventions to work with the leaders, what is changing in their style of leading and connecting with customer. And the key word you're probably all aware is kind of away from micromanaging to have a more collaborative and a post-heroic approach to work with your workforce. In support of this, we created an interactive workbook where we outlined the new ways of working and managing. And based, why we created this workbook is the assumption is, if you tell leaders and the workforce, you know, be more free or be more liberated in your work, they need a transitional period and to understand what is going to change and what kind of behavioral change is required from me. And the workbook basically it was a template they could use to have informed conversation and to simulate what's going to change for us and how this is going to look like and how will our behavior change, but also our communication style. And then for the culture and behavioral change work stream, we designed a facilitation training program for the business leaders where they could pick up the skills, what's changing, but also we provided them with another template to have half-a-day meetings with their staff to talk through the changes and what they need to transition from A to B. And then we built this into a continuous improvement program because, as you're probably all aware, it's the sustainable change that's the most important part. And also we offered coaching to help line managers to prepare their meetings and also to meet with their teams. And all of this was, we had a website, an internal website where we immediately shared success stories, but also stories of potential barriers. So it was a very open and transparent process where people communicated. So we tried to create the buzz that everybody is aligned and involved, and that worked very well. And I give an example. You see the outcome. Yes, we achieved all the changes, but I give you a story about what we have achieved. And if you walk in the shoes of a customer, we all are probably insurance customer, and your windscreen is broken. So the previous world, you called in, you had to send some stuff in. Somebody took a week to call you back, find your policy. And in this new world that we created, you called in, the claims handler could make an ad hoc decision within a certain remit of responsibility and accountability. It's, let's say, below £100, and they said, well, yes, we'll send you, please send us in a photo, PDF it, and send it in with your phone, and we're going to send you a check right away, and you can repair this wherever you want, and that was the whole process. So it not only saved operational costs, it also, as a customer, I wish the processes were all that easy where I'm involved as a customer. So that was in a short story the positive outcome. And I know now from other global insurances, it has gone far beyond the claims handling, the digital approach, but that's for another call. So I'm handing back over to Nick, who is going to talk about what are key learnings from it.
Thanks, Val. So you've probably already heard some of the learnings that Val is describing in this case study. And we want to explore a few more, and we've got 7 up on the screen in a minute when Val gets down to that slide. And I think Val already talked about one initially about the leadership, and I'm going to start there. So I would say one of the key learnings is to have visible, demonstrable leadership who's role modeling commitment and communication from the start to finish. And digital transformation is no different from any other large transformation program. It's too easy for senior managers to delegate this vital role to middle program managers if they think digital transformation is just a simple update to existing processes or a single functional change. But digital transformation is very much more about seeking to transform the whole organization, and so really needs leadership to step up to the plate, to be committed from the beginning and continuously committed all the way through. And role modeling of the new behaviors by the senior managers. So Val spoke about leaders becoming less directive and much more influencing, because that's the way the world is moving, and that's going to be more and more important. The other one, which was above that, is really about designing from the outside in. And often organizations begin thinking, what do we need to change internally? But as you're really there to serve your customer, whether you call them patients, clients, customers, friends, or associates, you really need to begin with understanding their needs and expectations. So using an analogy, people really want a hole in the wall rather than knowing what type of drill you're using. And in fact, in health, you can see this quite clearly, where patients don't care if you work for a GP surgery, work for the hospital, or work for some community provider providing healthcare. They don't care what processes or what technology you use. They really care about getting better. They really care about feeling better. So they don't care what processes or systems you use. Rather, they want a great experience of your products or your services. And then just in light of the time constraints, I'm going to jump to the second to last one, which was about working on nudging mindsets and behaviors from the beginning. And it's clear new mindsets and behaviors are needed to realize the benefits of new technology. As the saying goes, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you want people to own something and maximize its chances for success, then you need to give the people a stake in its creation and consider how to shift the behaviors in parallel while they work on creating the new digital organization. In practice, if collaboration is desired behavior, then this may look like getting people together in a workshop to map out the future processes, but get them to work in multidisciplinary teams across the various parts of your organization. And that allows them to build those relationships, to build trust, to really get to know each other and to start developing that collaborative behavior. And get them to work on that work, not in the workshop, but going forward into some program teams and project teams as a way of just generating that collaborative behavior. But I know you've probably read all of the other 5 slides, learnings on that slide, and I see that Val skipped us through to the practical examples. So I want to just touch on some of those as well. And these are really helpful, we've found, to nudge the emergence of embed new digital behaviors. And Val and I are going to just talk about a couple of those. I think I'll talk about the first 2, and then I'll let Val talk about the last 3. So organizational 360, this really helps build a common understanding of the dissatisfaction within the organization, of the status quo, and it helps create a vision of the future digital organization in a workshop setting This really breaks down the myths that have grown up over the years, really helps people recognize what's really true and what other people's perspectives are on what they see. And it helps them to gain a whole systems view. And it engages them in dialogue and helps them to understand how they contribute to the whole. And then in the second one around customer journey mapping, we'll find this really, really powerful when you get your customers into the room and you get them to discuss what they really need and what their expectations are. I was recently working up in Scotland where we had customers in the room and a number of functions. And one of the functions was internal communications. And they're talking about how they're pushing a lot of information at customers. And the customers stopped them and said, well, hang on, you send us a whole bunch of information, and actually all we need is these 3 things. And I know other types of your customers may not need the same 3 things as me, but why don't you think about what information you send per customer and not just send us everything, because that just really disengages us. So this kind of intervention really informs the selection and design of your digital tools and technologies and really helps your staff to recognize what customers really want and need. What are they expecting? What is the best journey that they would like while they interact with your products and services? And it also helps your staff to recognize what are the changes in their own behaviors that they need to make.
Thanks, Nick. I want to share with you about my experience with hackathons. So those among the listeners who are from IT, who are not surprised, hackathon comes from the IT world, but we in consulting have now hijacked the hackathon to use it to bring together for huge change initiatives and for whole systems change. And I'll give you an example. I worked with a global company. They brought together the global leaders, 350 people for 2.5 days, to align them about the changes to come, but also have conversation and work actively in 2.5 days on action programs for the countries, and everybody was involved. So it was it's a complete new ways of working. Instead of preaching to people, give them the opportunity to be creative and collaborative, and the result speaks for itself because nearly all the initiatives were implemented. So it's kind of a new way, what I call 21st century companies, new way of planning change and transformation in a short sprint for 2.5 days. And then we used, in this hackathon, we used rapid prototyping, using Lego, plastilene, and paper, to rapidly thinking with your hands. And there's something out there called Lego Serious Play, where you, instead of talking linear and explaining to people, and you're not sure how the other person or the other group of stakeholders perceive what you're saying, you create something tangible, and that's a completely different conversation. So we used a lot of Lego, plastilene, and paper to, or even role play to kind of outline what is our understanding of future changes, of transformation, of any other initiative. And coming out from the work from the case study I mentioned earlier, I realized that a lot of business leaders, also consultants, have a lack of really understanding of technology, and so we leave the technology and digital world mostly to IT experts. And so we started to design digital leadership journeys for leaders to understand what is the digital world, what will it bring to me, and we organize journeys for business to business to understand what other businesses do, but also have an informed conversation and then see what could be the impact on my business, because that varies from industry to industry, what the digital or what the opportunities are, and Alpesh will talk in a minute about there's great opportunity out there, but you need to understand first, but also overcome the barrier to ask awkward questions what you don't understand, what's not always easy for business leaders, and this has been a very successful initiative. So Without further ado, I'm handing over now to Alpesh, who will now talking about the digital world.
Hi, this is Alpesh. So I'm just going to go through a bit of a higher level of around the whole digital world and what's happening in the digital world, because what we're seeing is a hell of a lot of change and a hell of a lot of market dynamics, and driven by a lot by technology, driven by, as I'm sure you know, some of these emerging markets companies new companies, sorry, that are really taking existing markets and replacing them with new business models. So the title is Be Digital or Die, and really that's a fundamental point, in the sense that there's lots of companies who, if they don't change, they will basically disappear. And we know some of these companies. One of the most famous is Kodak, where Kodak didn't think digital cameras were going to take over the world. Even though they invented digital cameras, they didn't really pay attention to transforming themselves to using it into the digital world. And so what I'm going to do is, if you look at how the world has changed over the last 100 years, from mechanical production up to the internet and mass communications, we're really at the beginning of the next generation of industrial revolution, which is looking at new business models, looking at decentralized models. So some of the technology some of you may know around blockchain and distributed ledgers is fundamentally changing how a market works, where we've had what we'll call exchanges over the last thousands of years. We had market exchanges where people went to a physical building and buy and sold fruit, for example. Those models are going to completely change into decentralized models, where you don't have a centralized exchange, but people can do business peer-to-peer. One of the other biggest changes, which I'm sure all of you also know, is the fact that data is fundamental to every business. We've all businesses you know have collected data, but actually have they used it effectively? And what we've seen from our discussions and our work is actually fundamentally people don't use the data assets they have, even though they could help create new products, new services, serve the customers better, etc. People, most organizations really haven't started using the data assets that they have to reinvent themselves. So what will change? I mean, fundamentally, how we work, how we play, how we live, how we move around, how we socialize, how we make money is really going to change in the next few years, and we are right at the beginning of that change. Some of the key technologies I've already mentioned there, but let me elaborate on some of the technology trends, because a lot of the drivers are through the fact that it's digital, i.e. using a mobile app or a website, but also there's a whole bunch of other technologies which are emerging, which are also enabling the fundamental rethink of almost every industry, every market, and I'll talk about some of those sectors later on. The important thing to remember here is you never take any of these things in isolation. The important thing is that most new business models and market models will use a combination of these technologies to solve problems. So, as an example, if we take drones and how drones, where Amazon is starting to use drones for delivery, that will also involve IoT, that will also involve payments, that will involve cognitive computing and be able to have detection of an image, for example. So it's a combination of different technologies that you have to consider when you're thinking about a solution and a market model and a business model. So fundamentally, what we believe is that if you're transforming your business, you have to look at it soup to nuts. You have to look at it from the ground up and think about how the world's going to change, and think about 4 areas that we say. One is business models, and we've seen business models like Uber and Airbnb, which I'm sure you know about, who have fundamentally changed business models and how money is made. The new economy companies and on-demand economy companies are replacing how people buy products and services. New technology models, some of which we've described in the previous slide, are enabling a new way of thinking, a new way of building businesses. Blockchain is fundamentally changing not just financial services, but actually across many different sectors. As an example, you're seeing blockchain together with Internet of Things potentially transforming how supply chains work and how goods and services move across the supply chain. New market models are really fundamentally decentralized, moving from centralized hub and spoke based models to decentralized models. We have a peer-to-peer a peer-to-peer relationship with a customer or a partner. And every market is changing. The speed with which a market changes is obviously is a key factor. Different markets are changing at different paces. Financial services has had an older hype around blockchain, for example, but the kind of work we're working on is in supply chain, in oil and gas, in pharmaceuticals, even in travel, where people think the travel industry is already digitized. There's a whole bunch of back-end stuff that you don't really see, where there are many efficiencies, and we're seeing new technologies like blockchain and the use of data and analytics helping transform those. And finally, operating models. You know, if you look at new economy companies like the Amazons, like the Facebooks, the way that they build and deliver products and services is using Agile and Scrum. They don't wait. They don't have product life cycles which are months or years. They're product life cycles which are days or weeks. They figure out what they're going to experiment with. They put the stuff together. They test it, and they test the scale of it, and they keep iterating until they find something in the scale and release it to every customer in their of their business. So these new operating models are fundamentally shifting how business will function. And so if you take those four areas holistically, that's where the challenge is. How do you figure out from your market, your business, how are you going to shift that business model? You know, some of the attendees on the webinar are from media, for example. In the media industry, we're seeing the advertising model fundamentally going to change. We know that advertising and digital advertising, all that's happened is it's gone from offline to online digital advertising through display advertising. Well, engagement-based advertising and using different reward models and advertising models is fundamentally shifting how advertising will work in the future, for example. In the security area, in goods and services, IoT will fundamentally be embedded across everything that a physical supply chain, through delivery of equipment, the use of equipment, will then use that data to fundamentally build new products and services. So, simple example, instead of selling a physical piece of equipment, the data is all collected and you lease that, you rent that equipment. Because of the data is collected, you can do things like predictive maintenance, knowing if something goes wrong and being able to replace that piece of hardware before it goes wrong. So that's just 2 or 3 examples of how, just think about these holistically, the changes that are going to happen. So fundamentally, there are what we see is there are sort of 3 big areas around how markets and businesses are changing. One is marketplace models. If you look at how marketplace models, and so as an example in financial services, we've seen things like Funding Circle, which provide loans for businesses. They have a marketplace model. They're not a bank. They are a regulated entity, but they're not a bank, and they provide a marketplace model. And if you look at many different businesses around marketplace models, there are Uber is a marketplace model. Airbnb is a marketplace model. So what we're seeing is those marketplace models which overlap with platform models, and I'll talk about platform models in a minute, are fundamentally changing how actually businesses work. And on the right-hand side, it talks about some of the technology. I won't go into the technology, but ultimately the enabling technology is some of the technology that's shown on the slide on the right-hand side. So, you know, Goldman Sachs has talked about financial services around payments and wealth management, just to give an industry example. And the market is humongous, and the shift of that is already started. And most of these new fintech companies are chipping away at existing banks or financial service company insurers and replacing it with these new, more efficient models. And they're getting good traction. Now, depending how you think about these things will determine how, you know, whether you think there's going to be a winner or a loser in this space around in this case, financial services. But I leave that with you in terms of where you think it's going to, what's going to happen. So, some of you may or may not have seen this slide, just to give you a picture, just to give you a picture of what's happening. Taxis were very boring until about 5-6 years ago. And now, Uber is the world's largest taxi company and it has no vehicles. Facebook is bigger than any content company in the world, but they don't produce any content. It's all produced by us who are Facebook users. Similar with Alibaba, similar with Airbnb and hotel rooms. You know, interestingly, we have an opportunity right now with travel industries, and they're actually working with Airbnb, providing corporate travel bookings via Airbnb when they never used to do that. They've only traditionally used traditional hotel companies. So I won't go through the right-hand side where it talks about the kind of companies there. You'll get the slides so you can have a look at them. But this goes back to the 4-quadrant model that I showed you earlier about how fundamentally these businesses are being created. If you look at your business, think about those 4 areas: asset building, service providers, technology creators, or network orchestrators, and think about where you are in that space. And so just to elaborate on platform models, this is a platform model. There's an article here, it's called Pipelines and Platforms and the New Rules of Strategy, from Harvard Business Review. Have a read of the article. It talks about orchestration, it talks about management of the ecosystem in a platform and how that works. Unfortunately, the word platform has many connotations. Whether you're a technologist or a business guy, and everybody calls their thing platforms. There's fundamental characteristics which determine whether the platform model works and the platform ecosystem works. And what I believe is almost every market, every industry will have one or many platforms around orchestration. So the simplest way to look at it is Airbnb. What's the currency of value Airbnb? It's not the fact that you pay to rent and it's not only the fact that you pay to rent a room and the renter provides a room, but it's also around some of the currency in the platform is around the ratings, both individual ratings and the other side, the people who they rent from and giving them ratings. So I won't go through this, but you know, these are the core characteristics around platforms, and what I suggest is go away and have a look at that later. I won't talk about blockchain, but ultimately blockchain is impacting every industry in different ways and different stages. There's a lot more to talk about, and if you'd like us to come and talk to you about that, please get in touch. We're happy to come and talk to you about your industry and what's happening there around some of this technology. So going back to what I said near the beginning, every industry is changing. These are just 4 examples of industries where blockchain, in this case, is transforming the industry. Different paces which way they're moving. So financial services has been the most prevalent, but my belief is it's the slowest to transform. Logistics and supply chain will be the biggest and will move more quickly. Healthcare's fundamental changes are happening there around patient data and ownership of data. And electricity, businesses are almost fundamentally shifting right now, and one of the key applications of these new distributed decentralized models. So frankly, if you want to move to this world, think about the 4-quadrant model and build a digital transformation strategy at the board level, aligned to your business strategy. Actually, they're both overlapped and they're both effectively the same thing. But right now, there's lots of stuff that's happening which separates business strategy and digital transformation strategy. Rethink your business models and absolutely create a world-class team with digital natives and others to help do that transformation. So finally, just to say, you know, disruption of your business is here. Either disrupt yourself or be disrupted. Thank you for your participation and your time today, and we look forward to being in touch soon. Thank you very much.